Should I get the Christmas tree in the background? There it is. Good morning, PT on Ice patrons. It's Christmas season. Got the tree in the background for dramatic effect. Get you in the holiday spirit. It's Fitness Athlete Friday, so thanks so much for joining. This is Mitch Babcock back stealing the microphone this week as we pass it around as we typically do. Thanks so much for tuning in live if you're jumping on in the next few minutes, and thanks so much for downloading if you're checking out on podcast on your travels to and from where you're heading. So, Fitness Athlete Friday, I want to dive into a topic very, very familiar to a lot of clinicians, very familiar to a lot of athletes. Whether you're in the CrossFit scene or not, you've probably heard some discussion around what we're talking about today, and that being the kipping pull-up. So a little context for those who are unfamiliar with the CrossFit methodology, training style, and what the kipping pull-up is. And so we'll start there, and then we'll kind of go into the direction I want to take this morning. Is some red flags around the kipping pull-up and what to do about them when you have some folks coming in who are having trouble with that. So the kipping pull-up essentially is utilizing momentum and energy from the lower extremity transferred through the core to try to help propel an athlete up and over the bar during a pull-up, right? And so where the kipping pull-up really gets its generation from is out of necessity, basically, and fatigue, right? So we could theorize that if we had, say, 5 pull-ups programmed in a workout, that athlete may elect, given their level of strength and ability, to do all 5 strict, right? Just do regular straight arm hanging, chin over bar pull-ups. If we programmed, say, 50 pull-ups in that same workout, it may change how they go about it, and they may reach a point where they're fatigued, and then they begin kind of popping their legs or utilizing a little bit of momentum to try to get them up and over the bar. That's essentially the generation from where the kipping pull-up starts. Now, we circle back around to some of the talks that we've had before around efficiency and efficacy in our CrossFit movements. The efficiency of the kipping pull-up has become, very much so well utilized, I should say, because of how much upper body strength it saves you, right? So I can utilize momentum, I can utilize energy storage from my lower extremities to help propel me up and over the bar and do my kipping pull-ups in a much more efficient manner, right? And try to save some energy in my arms that way. So on a wide majority of CrossFit athletes, if pull-ups are listed in the workout, they're probably kipping most all of them, right, for the efficiency piece alone. So it's very much so common play in CrossFit, almost right on par with the air squat and the deadlift, right? The kipping pull-up is right up there with something that you're going to see in your athletes. Now, why this becomes an issue is for a couple reasons, right? We're going to see athletes that kind of fall into what I've kind of classified in 2 categories of why they may run into issue with the kipping pull-up. Now, for a kipping pull-up to really be done efficiently, it's not that the athlete needs to have a tremendous amount of shoulder flexion or hyperflexion beyond 180 degrees. That's not so much the case. They do need to have full shoulder flexion. They need to have full range of motion of that shoulder with that arm getting up by their ear, but they also need to demonstrate good thoracic extension mobility, right? And that's another piece that gets kind of forgotten or overlooked, is that we want global extension. So if you can visualize and go through with me, the athlete's chin is over the bar, they come back down and they essentially circle through, or they pass through the bar while their arms are still hanging on it, and they reach a point of global extension, right, where the arm is in kind of flexion up and overhead, the thoracic spine is well extended, and the hips are well extended, so that athlete has this nice C curve as they're at the bottom of their kipping pull-up. It's that globally extended position then that can quickly transfer to a hollow body position, or the inverse C, right, where they kind of quickly extend those hips, close off into hip flexion, and generate some power to pull themselves up and over the bar. So without that globally extended position, a tremendous amount of stress will be placed on the shoulder. And that's what we'll see with athletes who maybe have a stiff upper thoracic spine, and then their shoulders are trying to compensate. And what they'll do is bend the elbow to try to get some more range of motion where they can't pick it up at the shoulder and they can't pick it up in the thoracic spine. So prerequisites, we want to see that the athlete has full shoulder range of motion. We want to see that they have good thoracic extension mobility. And you can do that. You can test that in a couple different ways, however you like. I prefer to go with like an SFMA lumbar locked rotational test, right, to look at how much available active and passive rotation they have, as those are coupled motions in the thoracic spine. Kind of a screening tool to utilize there. And making sure that their hips aren't, for whatever reason, jammed up and can't get into extension at all. But the biggest pieces is that thoracic extension and the shoulder flexion mobility. Now, where athletes will run into trouble with their kipping pull-ups, and it's not that the movement itself is bad, it's that they run into some certain issues of their own as an athlete and with what the movement demands. They fall into typically two categories, and with these two categories, I kind of want to circle back around to why I believe one exercise may be beneficial for both of these athletes, right? And hear me out on this. So, athlete number one is a 49-year-old guy. We'll call him Joe. Because I don't know any Joes in my gym that I think of off the top of my head. Joe is, he works at a desk all day long, a desk job, but he's a big, strong guy. Joe's lifted weights for a lot of years, so he's a strong guy. He can rip off, 6 or 7 strict pull-ups, no issue. But they're all done with kind of a bent arm, right? He doesn't quite extend the arm all the way, and it kind of stuck stiff there. Does a lot of bench press in his day, so he's really developed kind of shoulders forward kind of position. And Joe has a hard time static hanging from the bar, just dead hang from the bar, and showing a full shoulder flexion position with that arm up by the ear. And so what the category Joe kind of falls in then would be a stiff yet strong athlete, right? These athletes can get into deep water kind of quick with the kipping pull-up because they're strong enough to stay on the bar longer than they probably should, and they're strong enough to push themselves essentially through ranges of motion that they don't quite own, right? They're like, no way, I got it, and they can almost like false generate like the basics of a kip on the bar because they're so strong to just push and pull from it and make it look like they're kipping, right? These athletes typically will have that reduced thoracic extension mobility that we talked about, right? They're stiffer in the T-spine because of how developed they are up in the shoulders or in the chest, or because they work that desk job and they have a hard time getting that extension out of their thoracic spine, and associated, they have a hard time getting full flexion out of that shoulder overhead, right? So these are the athletes that you're going to want to pay attention to, because they're going to tell you that no problem, I can do these kipping pull-ups, I'm strong enough, and they'll stay up on the bar and give you something that looks like a kipping pull-up, but it's missing the end ranges of motion on that. And that's where it can get harmful, is because they begin to kind of swing through. The shoulder doesn't quite flex all the way. The thoracic spine doesn't quite flex all the way. The elbow will flare out to the side. That's one of your tells. As they come down and through to try to generate a kip, the elbow will be flared and kicked out. And they'll continue to kind of push that shoulder through ranges of motion that they don't have ownership of, right? And that can lead to some irritation in the rotator cuff or in the posterior shoulder that could set them back a little bit. So be aware of this athlete. The second athlete is let's say she's a 31-year-old, maybe a mom of 2. Her name is Ashley, because I also don't know an Ashley, I don't think. She is very mobile, has done yoga for a number of years, can get those arms up and over her head no problem, but does not have a strict pull-up, never has had a strict pull-up, doesn't believe she'll ever get a strict pull-up. Yet is pretty coordinated, right? She's picking up on skills quite quickly in CrossFit, and is demonstrating a pretty decent, beat swing from the bar, or the basic genesis of a kip swing, right, without adding the pull-up into it, but just lacks the overall shoulder and lat strength to perform a strict pull-up, right? And this athlete can also get into deep water relatively quickly as well, this being kind of what we classify as like a mobile yet weak athlete, right? And they're just lacking the requisite strength to be able to control their body weight on the bar. And it's not that they're lacking the requisite skill. They could probably do kipping pull-ups with band assistance, no problem, because they know what the movement should look like. Band assistance meaning that we string a band up on the bar and we step into it with our feet, and that offloads 50, maybe 75 pounds of body weight, and so that they don't feel as heavy on the bar, and then therefore can perform the movement that way. They'll typically have success with a band, but if we get them out of a band and trying to do kipping pull-ups without, what you'll see is that they're fighting hard to get their chin up and over the bar. They don't quite make it, and they fall really quickly onto that shoulder. And it's just because they're lacking the pull-up strength to be able to control that range of motion. They know that they have the timing down, they know what the kipping pull-up should look like, and they definitely have the range of motion to swing through. But what happens with them is that they fall all too quickly, and it's like this reactive or this jerking onto the shoulder because they can't slow down that range of motion, right? So a couple different categories, a couple of different case examples for some athletes to kind of be on the lookout for where kipping pull-ups might be trouble. Now, the one exercise that I feel can help both of these athletes out, and for different reasons, is performing a cycle of eccentric pull-ups. Slow lowering eccentric pull-ups. And we'll start with case example 1 with Joe, right? Big stiff guy, can't get his shoulder extended all the way overhead, can't demonstrate an active hang position where that arm is all the way locked out. A slow eccentric pull-up, and we can either get him to do a strict pull-up chin over bar or get him to step up on a box so that his chin's over the bar, and then takes 5 seconds to lower himself down, and I want him to emphasize the end range where he feels stiff, where the elbow can't quite extend all the way, and I want him to sink into a little bit of new territory and spend 2 or 3 seconds down there at the bottom, and then drop off the bar. Step back up or pull yourself back up, and he's going to do 5 reps of that. 5 reps of a 5-second negative followed by a 3-second pause at the bottom, right? He's more than strong enough to make this happen. He's got the strength for it, but what we're emphasizing is that time under tension at the end ranges, right? Utilizing eccentrics and the benefit of eccentric training to lengthen muscle tissue to improve range of motion. And we see this in the hamstrings as well, and it works in the lats just the same. Utilizing time under tension at end range to try to get his shoulders to open up for him and try to approximate a better end range position, right? The same exercise, eccentric pull-ups, would be used for Ashley, right? Our very mobile yet weak athlete is going to go with eccentric pull-ups for a different reason. She's going to go with them to develop strength throughout the entire range of motion. Where she can't do a positive pull-up, right, from the bottom up, pulling her chin up, she will have success controlling the negative, right? And this is a really, really good way for athletes who struggle with a strict pull-up to get their first pull-up, right? Utilizing eccentric pull-ups or negatives, controlled negatives, to build strength through that entire range. And we'll go through a course of 4 weeks utilizing them 3 times a week of eccentric pull-ups, keeping the volume low to start because these eccentrics can be a little bit, a lot of soreness following with the DOMs, with the muscle breakdown that's happening. There's a lot of time under tension going on. So keep the overall volume low on the front end, and over the course of those 4 weeks, you increase that volume. So maybe they just do, 3 sets of 3 on week 1, right? 3 sets of 3 with that 5-second eccentric, and they can just pause for a moment at the bottom. What we're not trying to emphasize is that bottom range of motion. We know they have it, but I want to emphasize time under tension throughout that entire range, right? From the time the bar is at the chin all the way through to the end range of the pull-up and pausing at the bottom. Maybe 3 sets of 3 with a 5-second negative on week 1. Week 2, maybe we up the volume to 3 sets of 4, maybe 4 sets of 4 to continue pushing the volume in week 3, and maybe at week 4 I go to 5 sets of 5 to try to increase their volume over the course of 4. You can even extend that out to 6 weeks, and then retest that athlete's strict pull-up capacity at the course of that 6 weeks. Over time, what you're going to find is that athlete's going to develop the ability to do a strict pull-up. And we need athletes to be able to develop a strict pull-up if we're going to have them kipping safely. If they don't have the strength to pull their chin up and over the bar, they don't have the strength to slow themselves down repetitively over high-volume sets, and we need to develop that strength. So if you get an athlete mobile and weak who doesn't have a strict pull-up, we need to be setting aside 1 to 2 months of some strict pull-up work and some additional pulling volume so that they develop the strength and the capacity in their posterior shoulder and their lat to be able to control their body weight coming back down. Even though they have the skill and coordination to be able to do the kipping pull-ups, we want those shoulders to stay safe, and that's a really good way to go about it. Okay, so that puts me at just over 15 minutes. Hopefully you get an idea of what the heck a kipping pull-up is, why it's utilized, why it's not such a bad thing. Yet there's a couple athletes that typically will fall in a category that need a little bit more attention, and we need to slow them down before we get them into kipping pull-up. If you have questions on this or you want more information on kind of the eccentric pull-ups or whatever we're talking about, just drop a comment below and I'll circle back around to it. As for me, I'm catching a flight this afternoon to meet our fella Jeff Moore out in Baltimore. I'm catching his cervical spine management course. I'm going to hang out with him and the guys out in Baltimore, out at Ryan's Place Recharge. Going to have ourselves a good weekend. There's a good crew of folks coming in. I know a lot of them, so we're going to have a good time during the course, after the course. I know we're getting a little workout in Saturday after the course right there at Ryan's Place, so that's going to be a good time. And have ourselves a ball. We're wrapping up 2018. It's been a fantastic year. I appreciate all you guys for allowing me to steal the microphone and ramble for 15 minutes every so often. So thanks so much, guys, for downloading. We appreciate your support on for the Institute of Clinical Excellence dearly. So look us up, see where we'll be at in 2018. Otherwise, if I don't talk to you before the end of the year, have a very Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you and your family. Enjoy this season. It's a great one. We look forward to it. Just one more shot of the Christmas tree to get you in the spirit. So Troy, thanks so much for being on. Guys, take care and have an awesome Friday. We'll see you.